Hello, welcome to Convergent Dialogues. This is Xavier Bonilla. On this episode, I'm happy to bring the conversation I had with Henry Abbott. Henry is an award-winning journalist and founder of TrueHoop. He's led ESPN's 60-person NBA digital and print team, which has published several groundbreaking articles. He's won a National Magazine Award. He's also the author of the latest book, Ballistic, the New Science of Injury-Free Athletic Performance. And that's what we talk about. We talk about P3, which is Peak Performance Project within the world of sports medicine. We talk about the landscape of injuries in the United States. We go at length to talk about P3, talk about chronic injuries, healthy movement and hip rotation, landing and ACL injuries, prevention and recovery, mental endurance, and many other topics. I greatly enjoyed his book. This topic is a little bit different for me. I think I say in the conversation, I haven't talked a lot about sports medicine on the podcast, and so I'm always looking to continue to further branch out for other topics and other domains. And Henry was just truly a blast. He's such a, this big warmth and big energy, and just really, really passionate about what he's been working on and doing for many years. And it really was a delight talking to him and getting all of his knowledge and insights. As always, you can find this conversation and all other conversations at convergingdialogues.substack.com. I'm also on YouTube, so get over there and subscribe, share with your friends. And now I bring you Henry Abbott. I am here with Henry Abbott. Henry, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started, I can't recall. I mean, I've done a bunch of episodes and talked to a lot of people, and I can't recall if I've done anything, at least directly head on. As we'll get into it, there's overlap on things, but with sports medicine or sports science or anything within athletics. So this will be new for me, and it will be a lot of fun, and I think people really like it. So I am really, really excited to talk with you all about a sort of a newer topic on the podcast. You have a book, which is fabulous. I really enjoyed reading it. The book is called Ballistic, the New Science of Injury-Free Athletic Performance. This is out through wonderful Norton. So we're going to talk all about it. Before we do, just tell listeners kind of a snapshot of who you are professionally and what you kind of do for your day job and how you came to write the book.
I'm a bald man. I'm 50.
Listen, that's a good club to be in. You just got to get the beard going. You'll be good.
I actually have a little bit of a fantasy of like really training really hard as a runner and then growing a huge silver beard. My beard is now gray. Uh-huh. And then I want to go and like try to beat a bunch of 18-year-olds with like a flowing Methuselah beard, right? Wouldn't that be great?
That'd be great.
I don't know why.
Just put it to shame. Just be like, this old dude just ran circles around you.
They won't even care. They won't even know. No. It'll mean something to me. So I've been a sports writer pretty much my whole life. I went to NYU for journalism, and I worked in real news for a little while, and then I got the opportunity to work in sports. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, where the NBA was the only professional sport we had.
Trailblazers, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And I was a little bit of a Trailblazers fan growing up. So when I got to do some NBA stuff, it seemed like cheating or something. It seemed like just like not something you get to do for money. And so I've been doing that basically my entire adult life. And along the way, it just became so clear that the NBA does a terrible job preventing injuries, keeping people healthy. And, there was about a month ago, my friend Tom Haberstroh tweeted this list of like every superstar in the NBA, every star. That's probably about 50 players. And half of them were out with injury.
Yeah.
Half.
Yeah.
So I've been living in that world. At the same time, I've been aging as an athlete and having my own little issues. And so it just seemed like this was a topic that we needed to understand better, which is what prompted me to write this book.
Yeah, that's great. I love the world of sport generally. My sports I enjoy and kind of am crazy fanatic are football, also known as soccer here, and tennis. I love tennis. So reading a lot of stuff in the book was like, oh yeah, there's a lot here that could be applied for the tennis world. But I have really, I watch all sports usually throughout the year, or I follow it, I keep track of it. And over the past, I'd say 3 years, I really started getting back into the NBA, and I watch it. You know, I got NBA Pass, the whole thing. I watch NBA, a lot of NBA actually. So not just when playoffs are, I watch, you know, not just the in-season tournament. I watch a lot of the games.
Who's your team?
So I don't have a team per se. I really love Anthony Edwards. I really love the Timberwolves. So you know, I you know, and they're in the playoffs at the moment. So hopefully they get through. I'd love to see him win one. Love the team. Love their coach. But I like a lot of players. I mean, obviously, what the Thunder are doing is incredible. Cavaliers have had a good season. Let's when we're recording this, there's game 3 tonight. So let's see what happens. And then I like certain players at certain places. So, you know, I kind of, you know, when there's a game on or a match on, you know, there's certain players I like. I'll be, oh, okay. So, yeah, there's a lot of players I obviously respect. I watch a little bit of college basketball too, NCAA tournaments, always fun. Yeah, I mean, I watch the Lakers. I mean, I'm not a Lakers fan, but I watch the Lakers. I like them. And it's incredible to see LeBron play into his 41st year. Let's see if he's going to, but keep going. But yeah, so I mean, I watch a lot of teams. You don't have a team. You can't have a team, right?
No,
if you're writing on this, you can't have a team.
I'm a pioneering journalist where I just was like, I'm going to tell you I'm a Trailblazers fan. And because I've been a sports writer my whole life, and I know everybody's a fan. Like, I could tell you, I mean, I won't because I'm a nice person, but like everyone I know in sport, they're all fans. And if you read carefully, you can tell. It's the only way to get into this. So there's no way you would like persevere through what it takes to become a sports writer without loving the game. And you really don't, people seldom fall in love with the game through the lens of 30 teams, right? It's just not how our brains work. Yeah. So no, I just was like, I'm a Trailblazers fan. And every now and again, it causes a giant controversy because, I mean, there's so many ways you can cause a giant controversy in sports. But yeah, if I were ever to say anything about a Laker, then they'll be like, oh, God, of course, Blazers fan, I hate the Lakers, you know, whatever.
Yeah, no, I can imagine in your world, that's probably, people are going to say you're biased or whatever. But no, it's good. I think you're right. I mean, people got to get into it somehow. Let me just ask, you kind of mentioned in the book, what's the kind of landscape of sorts of like injuries in the United States? You gave some numbers there about that Americans encounter, and you know, more specifically, how people usually have this kind of trifecta of, you know, you have radiology, you have surgery, and then you have, you know, pharma, you know, drugs. So usually you're gonna, you know, get in there, you're going to take some pictures, you're going to see what's going on, you're going to maybe have surgery or whatever, and then some form of rehab. It usually is some kind of, you know, pills or whatever. But this isn't always helpful and not really effective long term. So, yeah, what's the landscape of injuries for I mean, athletes in the United States, but maybe just even non-athletes, just Americans? And why do we have it this way where we kind of just diagnose, you know, surgery and then kind of put a Band-Aid on it? Why is it this way?
We're in the pre-period, right, where the signal is being lost in the noise, and we don't really know what an injury looks like before it happens. So more or less, everyone just runs around, or doesn't, even worse, sits in chairs like you and I are doing right now, and eventually you encounter some pain, right? And I feel like at my age, almost everybody has something. If you go to a dinner party, people my age, every dinner party will have someone who's dealing with an elbow, a shoulder, a back, a knee, a hip, whatever.
You know, I didn't get the memo when after I turned 30, and I'm close to 40 now, but after I turned 30, I was like, oh, I was just talking about 30. Oh, okay, cool. And, you know, whatever. And nobody sent me the memo about how you slow down. It's harder to recover. You have to work out harder and longer for less payoff. No one told me any of these things. And now I'll do something. I'm like, I tweaked my back. I tweaked my ankle. What the hell is this? Why am I feeling this way? I'm not doing anything different than I did a year or two ago. Sucks. It only gets worse as you get older. It just sucks. I'm taking supplements now. I'm doing yoga. I'm doing all these things to like make sure I don't have like inflammation and all these things. I mean, playing tennis is, you know, terrible for your body in some ways. So it's like, oh my gosh.
So it feels like bad things happening to your body are just acts of God, right? They're just like lightning strikes, and boy, what could you have done? which is what we used to think about heart attacks.
Yep.
Right, it used to just be, you can find cardiology literature from 200 years ago, and they'll tell you that this guy was struck down because he was coveting his neighbor's wife or something. It was just, this is what it looks like when we don't know what causes it, right? Then the electrocardiogram came along, later the echocardiogram, and you could see the blood flow through the heart. And you could see that for a decade or so, the blood flow would slow down through the arteries. Then you'd have the crisis of the heart attack, which meant there was this preamble when you could intervene. And it's become arguably the most successful intervention in the history of medicine, where nowadays we all get routinely screened for cardiac health. And if you show some warning signs, exercise, diet, maybe medicine, and then heart attacks have gone way down. U.S. life expectancy has gone way up since this became common. So this is what we're in the world of ACL tears and Achilles tears, and even just like, lower back pain, so many different problems that affect all of us. We're kind of flying blind in terms of what's upstream from it, when we might be able to intervene. And that's what the book is about. This guy, Marcus Elliott, who's a Harvard doctor, who basically is 35 years into dedicating his life to like figuring out what's upstream so that you can intervene to prevent it. He has the conviction that all of the good medical interventions are prevention. And so it's just reasonable we'd want to apply that to this giant category of injuries.
Yeah, it was cool. The book is nice because you basically kind of follow, him and his research and the program and everything. And then, you give other examples of athletes and other things in certain areas. So it's nice. It's almost sort of narrative form, and it's just very digestible in that way, instead of just like a bunch of kind of like technical literature. It's really nice.
That's all credit to Tom Mayer as the editor at Norton. Great guy, smart guy, lots of good. I mean, I know a lot of authors feel like they don't really get real editing help these days. I went to lunch the other day and there were 7 authors, and I was the only one who was like, oh no, my editor totally made the book better.
Yeah, and, there's some presses that are really good at that. They have some fantastic editors. Yeah, I've heard that Norton has some good ones. There's some other presses out there that have some really fantastic editors. So tell us, how did you meet, Marcus, and tell us about the Peak Performance Project, known as P3, as we'll relate to it for the rest of the conversation. How did he develop it? What's the science behind it? Just tell us about it.
So yes, he went to Harvard Medical School. He had an externship with Tim Noakes, who's a globally known physiologist with all this expertise into running and exercise. The Patriots reached out to him because he'd done a program in preventing hamstring strains, and they had a lot of hamstring strains on their team, so he worked for them, and then he worked for the Seattle Mariners as like Major League Baseball's first kind of sports scientist. But eventually he realized he had to hang out a shingle and do his own thing if he were going to like have the freedom to explore the human body the way that he wanted to. And so he started P3 in Santa Barbara. And as far as he knows, they were pioneers in having force plates in a gym. And so they started noticing all this data about how people land and how they put force into the ground, which seemed to be a very lively data set. And but it raised more questions than it answered. And so then they got motion capture infrared cameras in the ceiling. And now, how do we feel about cursing on this program?
Or you can say whatever you want. Okay,
great. So at one point, Marcus is explaining like this data set compared to, he's a guy who had indulged in microbiology and neurology and physiology and all these other fields trying to find the signal upstream of injuries. And when he got to this data set, the quote is like, "This shit's so good, everything else is dead weight."
So he found the elixir. He found the thing, and has just been refining it and enhancing it. And so I guess where is it like? I guess what's that story, that evolution like along the way? Like where has it been? I mean, it's been used with various professional athletes, and people are incorporating this. Is it like the New York Knicks come to him and say, "We're going to use your program. Give us all of the things." Like how does it kind of work where it's implemented and you get data and things like that? How have people used it?
So starting 2014, the NBA had P3 make a setup of their like cameras and force plates, a sort of version of it at the NBA Draft Combine in Chicago. So not every player, but almost every player coming through would get assessed. They started building the database pretty fast that way. The Utah Jazz became an early client, so they would bring a whole bunch of players out for big off-season training, or anyone going to be having for an injury, that kind of stuff. There have been William Morris Endeavor is one of the big agencies that has NBA players, and they have an exclusive deal to bring their players there for pre-draft training. So that's what's happening right now. Some of the best NBA draft prospects will do 6, 7, 8 weeks of training in Santa Barbara just to get their bodies really tuned up for what's coming up is the draft combine, and then they'll go out and do their visits, their pre-draft visits with the various teams where they have to go and do the most explosive dunking and the most incredible shooting, and they want to be all dialed in for that. And then there are a bunch of players. Actually, when I was there not too long ago, this was kind of funny. I don't know if you remember, Jahlil Okafor was the number 1 overall draft pick of the 76ers a while ago.
The name is ringing a bell, yes.
He's a giant man, 7 feet tall. His NBA career was kind of a sad disappointment, a lot of off-court stuff. And anyway, he ended up in Mexico City and off the NBA radar entirely, and he tore his Achilles while he was there. And while I was writing the book, I was in Santa Barbara, and sure enough, there's Jahlil Okafor. I haven't seen him in 5 or 6 years. And I was in the little changing booth waiting to get into the cryotherapy chamber. And the next guy in line is Jahlil Okafor. And what happened with him was he was one of those pre-draft players who came to train at P3. And then when he tore his Achilles, he remembered this place. He was like, I just got to go. That's where they give the best care, right? And so he went back to train there. But yeah, so now the NBA's just started. The new NBA collective bargaining agreement has a clause inspired by Marcus of P3 whereby they have the right to assess every team can assess every player 4 times a year. So they have these kind of baseline assessments of what they move like when they're moving well, which is super powerful in knowing, for instance, like right now Stephen Curry's out injured. If they'd had these assessments, they would have a very healthy idea of when he's safe to return to play, because the answer is when he moves like himself.
It's a hamstring, right? I think he had a hamstring strain or something like that. Yeah.
Which is a tricky one. I'm learning about this today, actually, but his longtime teammate Klay Thompson had a hamstring strain and returned during the playoffs in 2019 and then tore his ACL, which is which in theory could be directly related to one of the things the hamstring does is stop your tibia from pushing forward into your knee where your ACL is. And with Marcus says he could see that Klay was moving timidly when he came back from his hamstring, and then he landed in a way that wasn't routine for him, and sure enough, tore his ACL. So this is the kind of stuff you have to worry about if you're the Warriors training staff right now, because they've been through this a couple of times.
Well, and I mean, Steph isn't young anymore, and he's, people forget it, but I mean, or maybe not, but they had a long summer last year into the next season this year, and they're in playoffs this year, and he's older, and he's
37.
got a lot of miles on him. So yeah, I mean all that stuff becomes important. I mean, I'm sure we'll mention it, but I mean, how much is in the mix of this of like, genetics? I don't want to say bad genetics, but like certain things about certain people where they just they have they got quote unquote bad knees or whatever. Like, how does the program help for certain people? Like, I think of someone like Zion Williamson. I think of Joel Embiid. These are some big guys, like big in terms of height, but also big in terms of like their body frame. Their body frame is they're big guys. And I just feel like they're always injured. I mean, they're just always injured. And is that just something that, well, if they did more of this, some of the P3 stuff, they could catch it earlier? Or is it just, maybe it would help, but some of this is just, there's already too many tears. There's already too many, maybe it's just, again, some bad genes. Like what do you make in these sort of cases we know about?
Well, we're all descended from nomads, right? Like all of our ancestors were moving, right? They were running, walking great distances over mountains, seasonally, all this stuff. So I don't think there's anybody who evolved to have a knee that just doesn't work, right? Like they can all work. There's a fascinating finding. Oh my gosh, we're going to dork out for a second. So P3 is published in some academic journals, but one of their big frustrations is that they're using a machine learning model. So they have 1 million data points per athlete per assessment, and they have 134.4 terabytes of data on their servers, and they're able to do these big multifactorial, what's happening upstream when it ends in this thing downstream, right? Then they can use very clever systems to play matching games there. That's not how academic journals work, right? The academic journals want to make an isolated single variable, univariate analysis, right? And so Marcus is frustrated by this because he's like, a human body moving well is poetry. It has so many, it's like a symphony, and you can't put that in this little 4 square box of the chart. So they'll say basically, if your hip flexes this much, did it result in this thing, right? So what that misses is this fascinating thing to your point about these big guys. So if you have good landing form, which we can discuss in more detail, then you can be super heavy and it is no added risk. But if you have bad landing form, then extra weight is a giant risk factor. So it's completely lost in a univariate analysis. It doesn't even show up as a concern. But when you put this multifactorial thing, so I think of it like, it's raining right now where I am. Like, does that matter to me inside? It's like, well, does the roof leak? Like, if the roof doesn't leak, it doesn't matter that it's raining, right? So if you have a good roof, you have a good landing form, it doesn't matter if you have some extra weight on you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of the serve in tennis, where it's like, yes, if I'm not landing right, oh my God, my lower back is going to be in pieces later, a couple of days later, and you really have to be able to land well. So I could definitely see that. Yeah, that is very interesting. And then people obviously know that muscle, it weighs a lot, sometimes more than other parts of us. And so if you have a lot of muscle, these are, again, the 2 people I gave as an example are some very big guys. They're muscular and things like that. So I could see how that would be in the mix. One of the things that you say is that P3 is all about making healthy movement automatic. What is healthy movement, and and where does rotation come into play here? Why is it critical?
Yeah, rotation has a couple different roles. So most non-contact injuries in P3's data come from landing. The forces, they say it's just like high school physics. There was one NBA player stepped off an 18-inch box, which is a standard part of their assessment, and landed on the force plates with 11,000 newtons of force, which is not a number that meant a lot to me before this research project, but I can tell you now that's more than triple the force necessary to fully sever a human spine.
Oh my goodness.
So it's...
Well, how did he do that? He just felt weird?
No, we all land with massive forces. These are the biggest forces in sports are from free fall, right? So even running, it's far bigger forces than if you're weightlifting, right?
Really?
Because gravity goes down and it affects everything, right?
Yes.
So this is one of the big findings is, even little people who aren't super terrible form have massive forces when this is why the book is called Ballistic, right? As soon as you're airborne, then you're hitting with huge forces. Now, there might be some impulse to just to run and hide from these forces, right? To avoid them at all costs. But it doesn't work is the thing. Instead, you have to gear up for them, right? You have to train in these moments of free fall to put a foot out in a way that can take it. And our bodies are super well designed for this, right? If you have a stiff ankle, that doesn't mean an immobile ankle. It means an ankle that's prepared to take a lot of force it's well positioned to take a lot of force. That really, in practical terms, the coaching tip they give is toes up. So you want to land on the ball of your foot, and now your heel, I'm going to move my hand, but your heel can wiggle this way and that way. Basically, if you have strong muscles in your lower leg, below the knee, they're well positioned to hold the heel in a good position so that as you land on the ball of your foot, the force of landing immediately passes into your Achilles and your calf, and then your quads, and then your glutes. And then you get 3 stack joints, ankle, knees, hips, which kind of accordion. In that method, you can absorb massive forces without injury risk. And if you do that in the right way, then if you think about you're elongating these big muscles, and without any work at all, the rubber band snap back, which gives you freebies of movement into the next running step or jump. And people who don't naturally flex all those big muscles in that way have to put a lot more work into the next jump, can't jump as high, and are more likely to get injured. So that's what I'm talking about with healthy landing.
I see. And so how does the rotation piece
come into play? Yeah. I got myself off track.
No, it's great. Okay. It's great.
So rotation is a couple different things. Torso rotation is something they really train hard with baseball players because hitting and throwing are both very rotational. It's a neurological process. People who don't grow up playing baseball never get great at baseball. I think everybody in Major League Baseball played baseball at a young age because if you don't learn how to rotate like that when you're super plastic and young, you can never catch up. One theory is that Michael Jordan didn't succeed in baseball for this reason.
Interesting.
But so
he did all right, though. He did all right. Okay. No, he did okay. He's all right.
He didn't hit the curve, though, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense of your torso, rotation is a valuable skill for your core that can be helpful in generating force and then in translating force. So let's say, actually, another cool finding, one of the early findings of P3 having force plates in the floor was that two kinds of player can throw a baseball 95 miles an hour. They're either huge, strong men who are just like Randy Johnson.
I was going to say Mark McGuire, but without the roids.
Yeah, or with the roids.
Or with the roids,
yeah.
Both.
Even better. Or there are these really small guys who could throw the ball 95 miles an hour, but they did it a different way. They did it by being super efficient with like the nervous system signal of like passing the force through their bodies. They push on the floor with their foot, and they would translate that into the hip, which would translate through their core, into their shoulder, and their elbow, and then their wrist, and then they would throw the ball, and it was just super efficient. Kinematic is the word, through their body, and like that ends up being rotational, but also that kind of nervous system training ends up being the primary focus of P3 because that's where most of the training gains are in moving better, right? Is you want to be more like those guys. The other form of rotation is a cause of a lot of injuries, which is the leg bones of many athletes rotate. So like a giant cause of ACL tear, the second leading cause of ACL tear in a P3 study is that some people, as they squat or land, the femur, the upper leg bone, rotates within the leg, which is kind of like the twisting the turkey leg off the turkey at Thanksgiving, right? That can tear your ACL.
Wow.
And you can fix it. It's trainable. You can get the hip muscles to hold the femur in place. Other people have the tibia. So actually, this is, you might find, I've noticed this is pretty common. If you sit down in a chair, a lot of people will have their toes rotate out a little bit. A lot of people don't, but
I don't think I'm
reflective moment.
How do I naturally sit? I don't think, maybe a little bit. I do. I mean, I have bad scoliosis, so but I do on my right foot a little bit.
Okay, so that's your tibia rotating out. So in some athletes, the femur rotates in, and the tibia rotates out as you squat. That is wringing out your knee like a dish rag. Those are and the one guy from P3 who's like the very sober-minded data guy, Eric Liedersdorf, he told me that that's like the Tim Duncan and David Robinson of ACL tear, right? If you have I started calling it the dish rag because I'm a stupid guy and that's an easy way for me to remember it. And then they started calling it the dish rag. But
it's a good visual.
It's the dish rag.
Yeah.
But those things are trainable. All these things are trainable. You can if you know how to fix it, if you know what to look for, you can see the warning sign, and then you can do some not rocket science kind of training to reverse it.
Is it a little bit different? So one of the things when I've talked to people that have played professional sports or they've competed at a high level is what I've learned in different sports is your hips and your hip rotation is like everything for sports. I mean, people don't think about that. I didn't think about it for a long time, but like, I play tennis. I remember when I was learning how to do the serve, which I'm still terrible at, right? But when I learned how to do the serve, you know, the buddy of mine that taught me, he said, it's like the pitch in baseball. It's the same thing. You're going back and then you're turning and you're throwing into it. So you come from like back, side, and then you go forward, and then the rest of your body catches up and all these things. Serve is the same way. You know, you're throwing the ball, toss is critical, and then you're reaching for it, and then you hit it at the right spot up there, and then you come down. It's a whole thing. And I remember one time I went to play golf with, must have been my dad and a few other people. And I remember just looking, it's like, same thing. You're like, don't look up, just look at the ball, even after you hit it. But like, you have to throw like your hips and your torso. It's just like every sport. The same thing as I go see somebody, my cousins, they coach, soccer, here, and, it's some pretty, high levels, and it's just open your hips, open your hips, the midfielders, open your hips. And it's like, what is open your hips? It's just every sport has it, right? Well, how is like for some of the P3 stuff with, and again, same thing in basketball, when you're defending, you got to watch people's hips, it's like every sport is super important with hip rotation. I mean, how much do you see those issues in a variety of sports, maybe basketball or other things, and how does like the P3 model try to help with hip rotation?
So we're seeing the world very similarly, and I could talk for like an hour right now just on him. Like there was a part when I was writing the book, and I was spending a lot of time asking people at P3 a lot of questions and stuff. And at one point, and I would draft the chapters, and then I would call to check in to make sure I got it right. And at one point, I said to Marcus Elliott that I had 3 complete chapters on hips. And he was like, "What?" He was like nervous about it, right? Because he's like, "What did I say to you that would merit 3 chapters on hips?" But it's a little different now. It's reorganized. It's not quite 3 chapters, but yeah, more or less, it's okay. I'll try to. I just wrote some notes as you were talking, so I could try to be a little concise in like encapsulating some of what matters about hips. So, number 1, it's where we generate force. So, one guy, P3, said to me that every single sports center top to highlight is hip extension. So somebody starts with their hips bent, and then they straighten their hips, and that's how you jump high and run fast, and that's how you make highlights, right? So it's just those are the big muscles that move us at the center of our body. Okay, number 2, going back to the beginning of evolution, I think hips legitimately make us the dominant species on planet Earth and brilliant and able to use language. And I could talk about, there was actually a time where this was like 20 pages of the book. Now it's down to maybe 3. But when a cheetah runs full speed, right, it's way faster than us. Right. But its body is like a croissant, right? It squeezes together. Yeah. And almost every animal like that, it has to fully empty its lungs with every running step. Try that. Like, try to see how long you can sprint exhaling every step. I think they counted that Usain Bolt exhales every 20 steps. Wow. So our evolutionary advantage here is that our hips just separate our legs from our lungs, which is, I think we're the only ones. Well, actually, there's some upright animals, like some lizards run on 2 legs and stuff, but they...
but there's some other bipedal mammals, or other animals, but they don't do it all the time.
Like ostriches and stuff.
Yeah, it's a little different.
But yeah, there's some academic reason, but we're special in this way, and it puts our heads up high so you can see. It lets you run all day, and we sweat, which is rare. And the uprightness lets us have, like, a dog apparently is disadvantaged in developing language just because of like their vocal cords are depressed by their form. They're being downward. Anyway, so our hips put us upright. In addition to all that, like, think about how a dog is designed compared to us. We have this really big topple risk, right? And like the base of the thing for us is not just a base. It's not like a lamp base. It's on top of legs that it moves in like super dynamic ways, right? It's a very big physics project, these hips. And we call it one thing, we call it hips, but it's not one thing. It's totally cheating. It's a bazillion, it's glutes, it's the TFL, it's the QL, it's the psoas, it's on and on and on. All of these things are working together. And I think, they're problematic in modern life because we sit a lot, but mostly they're brilliant, right? Mostly they let us do all sorts of things that no one else in the animal world can do. And they need a little maintenance, though, I think, and it's a special joint in that, according to Marcus, 100% of the athletes that test P3 come away with some kind of recommendation to improve their hips. So, we're in a little bit of an evolutionary crisis, I think, with they are designed for us to move all day, and we move like not nearly all day.
Yeah, you start reading this and you start seeing things and you're like, yeah, like hips are huge. Like they're
making a comeback.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's everything. It's everything. And people that play at a high level usually know that and have worked on that, and it's really, really, really important. Let's go back to you can bring in ACL injuries because this happens a lot. But you talk about how the P3 model teaches people how to land. We were talking about this earlier. And I didn't know this. I read in the book that it's 2 to 8 times more likely that women have higher risk for ACL injury, which blew my mind. That's crazy. Yeah. Tell us about why landing is so important. You were talking about like we're absorbing impact and the gravity of it, but I guess a little bit more of what happens in an ACL injury, of why we see them often, and where if maybe through P3, but what is the ways you can have it a little bit more preventative?
Yeah. So I really came to think of the human body as like the egg in that egg drop experiment in physics class. Did you have that experiment in physics class?
This is sounding vaguely familiar. I had a lot of experience.
Everybody did this. I thought it was like a law that you had to do this.
Remind me again?
So in a lot of physics classes, and actually it's funny, I've been using this example and I said it as a high school thing, and a lot of people said to me, no, we did that in 7th grade. Okay, I guess I went to a slower school. But they would hand out a raw egg to everyone, or maybe you have to bring it in, and then they give you like random supplies, pipe cleaners, paper, tape, balloons, you name it, and you have to just devise a contraption that will make it so that the teacher can drop your egg off a ladder or out the 2nd story window or off a tree branch and have it cascade to the ground and not break. And you're supposed to learn. It's a teaching lesson for principles of physics. I've come to think of our torso, which is 80% of our mass in most cases, as the egg. I told you that we land with sufficient force to crack, essentially, right? So our contraption are the 3 stacked joints of ankles, knees, and hips, right? That's what our physics classes come up with to make us land better. Okay, so now picture so that the big forces are the free falling egg and then the ground, and the force is sufficient to rupture your ACL or any ligament in your body, right? So you want to have those forces collide in a way that's not harmful. If you land, let's say, just straight on your heels, then that's the bottom of your tibia, right? Your tibia is going to be like a pool cue. And it's just going to jam straight into your knee, right? Your knee's the top of the tibia, right? So,
yeah.
And then you might have, you could land straight-legged if you were really psychotic. And then you'd have the egg pushing straight down as like another pull cue, right? And then these fighting pull cues are going to have a massive force in the middle. P3's found basically that catastrophic knee injuries, none of the leading factors are in the knee. It's all in the ankle and the hip, because you want to manage these 2 bones so they don't collide with your ACL, right? It's not so hard, right? You just need all those forces. I think we have this bone bias. We think of everything in terms of like the skeleton because that's easy for us to see in X-ray and it was in our textbooks. But but the fact is, you want the soft tissue to handle your landing, right? If you land on the ball of your foot with your toes up, then you can put the very little force on your bones and tons of force into your stretchy Achilles tendon and your calf muscles and your quads and your glutes. And if you can avoid these rotational things I was talking about, then you're pretty good.
Why do we see so many ACL? Is it just people have bad landing or they make a weird movement? Especially with athletes, why do we see so many? It's just you get that like weird turn or... I've seen some pretty ugly ACL.
Oh, it's scary. Yeah.
I've sure seen some ugly ones.
So there are so many theories, but I could show you, there's really good, I love this actually. Some of the top ACL experts in the country have lectures online. And I've watched several of them, and they all kind of say the same thing, which is amazing, which is basically there are a dozen leading theories as to what is behind this. And for every leading theory, according to these experts, there's counter evidence. So, for instance, one of the big theories is about Q angles. So this would be a handy explanation for why women have a higher rate of ACL tear. They have wider hips. Q means quadriceps. So basically, after World War II, this pioneering researcher Håkan Bråtström, I hope I'm saying his name right, used his X-ray machine to measure the angle, basically from the hip to the knee, of all sorts of people who had big knee problems, and found that basically their knees were more likely to have valgus collapse, where they dive in towards each other as you bend your knee. That idea caught on like wildfire. It's easy to assess, it's easy to see, and it's in the literature 1,000 times over. And it's, a convincing theory of ACL tear. However, if you watch these same lectures that I've watched, you'll learn that in people who actually tear their ACLs, they don't find that they have worse Q angles than people who don't tear their ACLs. So it's like a frustration. There are other theories about the width of the notch that your ligament lives in, or the width of the ligament itself, or there could be hormonal theories, right? Like there really are some convincing studies that women who are having their period are more likely to tear their ACL, and on and on. But every theory has point counterpoint in the data. And so this is where I'm particularly fascinated by this granular movement data that P3 is using, because it has a totally different set of suggestions, right? It's this femoral rotation thing is undiscussed, as is this. Their number one movement associated with ACL tear, which in NBA players over their study period of a 400-player study, 100% of the players who tore their ACL had the habit of landing on the outside of their foot and then having the weight roll to the inside, which moves your shin like a windshield wiper. And a little bit of that is fine, but if it gets to 25 degrees of movement, then it's putting your knee in a terrible situation. And so we have this thing where I feel like we haven't seen the real cause, so it looks like every cause, but now we're starting to see a suggestion that we see the real cause. And but there's one little red flag, which is we do know the solution, which is strange. For all of these, there's 200,000 ACL tears a year in the U.S. and among like female soccer players, it's a total epidemic. In the Olympics, every single team had at least one player out with ACL tear. But there have been these programs around for 20 years that teach players how to land, specifically female soccer players, and they're super effective. Like depending which study you look at, like 68 or 75% reduction in ACL tears. But the paper is about why aren't those programs widely deployed? And no one really knows. It's not widely deployed, but it does address P3's movement concerns, right? If you do those programs, it's not like a perfect prevention program, but it's pretty darn close to preventing this translation problem of landing on the outside of the foot, or the femoral rotation problem can both be addressed by these kind of landing protocols that have been taught for a while.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I'm thinking of there was a soccer player last year. It's an ugly injury. He's the right back for Real Madrid, Dani Carvajal. And
I'm so glad you remembered the name, because I'm terrible at that game.
and he tore his ACL. He tore another ligament. He tore like two other ligaments. I mean, what he did was he took a long ball pass from across the field, and he was the one to receive it, and he had to extend his leg out to get it, and he hyperextended it, and everything shredded, and so his knee was just fucked. It was just, I mean, he tore like three ligaments. I mean, just ACL, exterior ligament. It is. You see the video and you can see the moment where it just.
I don't watch those videos. I don't like that at all. Yeah,
it's like, oh my goodness gracious! And
is he back?
Well, no. I mean, he's out for the season, so
it just happened. Okay.
He's trying to. I mean, he'll be fine for next year. But
yeah,
then that was the other thing. I mean, you see these pictures too. You look at both legs, and the muscle loss on the one leg is incredible. It's incredible. Like, and again, as we were talking earlier, I also see as you get older, not only do I have to work out to not gain weight, but I also have to work out to not lose muscle either. Because as you get older, that like atrophy is crazy. It is crazy how much we lose muscle. I'm not too sure why. I don't know if we just don't need it from an evolutionary perspective anymore. I mean, we obviously do. It's a strange thing about the muscle loss we have and muscle tone and things like that as we get older. But yeah, it's just it's a horrendous injury. But I guess I'm curious. I'm going to go back to my other point here. I remember, you must know Rafael Nadal. He's, the
Sure.
one of the greatest tennis players ever. He, like, the guy is a poster child for like sports injuries. He, I think he missed something crazy. I'm going to get the number wrong, but it was a high percentage of Grand Slams, not to mention all the other tournaments they play, because of injury. So many in his 22 years he played. And it's just for people like that, it kind of goes to my point about like, Embiid or it's like, I don't know if he just, I mean, apparently he's got a really good team, good medical team over there in Spain and stuff, but like some of this stuff just doesn't feel like it's preventative. Like, because when you think of the type of play he's doing, he's just pounding his body all day, every day. And he only plays that way. He's not like a ballerina like Federer was, where the guy's just gliding on the court, right? Is it just sometimes the way people play? They just run into the ground and they're just beating their body up and they're just going to get injured more. But
so 600 muscles coordinated by your brain, and they move in poetic ways, right? Rafael Nadal is a gazelle flying around the court, and something's off, right? And when I grew up, there was always the idea that sports injuries were simple. Like your PE teacher would be like, "Oh, did you hurt your leg?" These were not Harvard MDs, right? These were not. But I feel like, in fact, the issue is, like in this giant orchestra, like one violin string is flat, and it takes a very special ear to be like, turn that one, and now we're good, right? So nobody who's playing right now has had that conductor, right? We're just learning like the sheer number of variables in human movement that could be a little off is almost beyond human comprehension. But, 1 million data points per assessment, we're starting to get a glimpse, right? Of like, if you sprain your ankle, your likelihood of ACL tear goes way up, because when you next land on that leg, your ankle, which used to give 30 degrees, now only gives 15 degrees, and the rest of the force has to be absorbed somewhere, and it might go into your knee in a bad way, right? So there are, that's a very dumb example. There are 5,000 more, right? Or there, when they talk about a P3 is stuff like, a lot of teams have started training hip stability and hip mobility more, but then NBA players started getting big bone stress fractures, which didn't used to be a problem. But it's because like players used to land, the theory is, in kind of a loosey-goosey way with the lower leg. And if you train just the hip, then they would like hold the top of the leg very firm. Well, the lower part of the leg was swirling around, which twists the bone, and now you get stress fractures. So like, it's super multifactorial and it's super complex. And Rafael Nadal never had a shot to like really get at the core of what was happening. But I think now it's coming. It's coming where you could say, oh, actually the root issue is this oddity of how he lands, or this way he's compensating for an old injury, or this, kind of stuff that like we were trusting like the naked eye and some kind of voodoo to find before.
What about like these ideas of there's certain athletes that, so people kind of make the claim of, the only reason, well, not the only, but a reason why LeBron is so good for so long is because he's got like, he denies it, the $1 million he spends a year on his body. He's doing the Cairo, he's doing the sleep deprivation tank, he's doing everything, literally everything. I don't know if he's doing the cupping. Do people still do that? I mean, the swimmers used to do the cupping.
Oh yeah, cupping's still going. You can see the marks on the bodies in NBA games.
Yeah. Everything, diet and this and that. And, again, he plays a particular sport, so he has to be a certain kind of like weight, but not too much. And people say like, yeah, like if all the 90s players did that, they would have played for much longer. If Michael Jordan was doing everything that LeBron is doing, he would have played at least another 5 years or whatever. But I don't know. Do you think some of that stuff is a key thing? Like if you're doing preventative things, or what you're doing in like your physio after matches or games, how you recover, obviously that stuff's important. Is that some of the reason? Like what's the relationship, I guess, between the preventative stuff P3 tries to do and then the recovery stuff that, people do after matches or games that is allowing to have more longevity? You could throw Tom Brady in the mix here. I mean, I know he's got his whole his whole system that he does. What is it, TB12? Man, I don't know what it is. He's got this whole thing.
You can buy infrared pajamas from Tom Brady's brand if you
Jesus.
want.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Jesus.
I know what you want for Christmas.
How did you know? Yeah, what's that relationship between preventative and recovery, I guess?
Well, the biggest innovation in the NBA since Michael Jordan's time is that players don't drink till 4 a.m., right? Like
most don't.
Very few do. I mean, it's literally like the game is way faster and more explosive, and you have a hard time keeping your job if you're in the club as late as Michael Jordan was. By and large, so my business partner at TrueHoop is a man named David Thorpe, who is like the personal trainer of I think he has 13 NBA players in the playoffs. And so he's dealing with them every day, back and forth, prepping them for games or guarding this person or how we're going to attack this thing. And they have intense personal relationships. And when they get together, David would love to have a glass of wine or a beer, and none of them will do it anymore. They're like, no, coach, not in season. They want to hang out, but they just don't drink a lick in season. Yeah, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but it's not very many. And so that's the biggest
alcohol,
one.
But there's also like you got the Dennis Rodmans who were doing like, cocaine and they were.
Yeah, it used to be when I started covering the league, it was like a partiers league that people had, Bentleys and fur coats, and they were like, you could see them late at night at this concert or whatever, right? And like, it's just, that is not the league we have anymore. It's completely goody two shoes now compared to all that. My buddy Christy Oshmondon wrote a book over there called Good to Go, where she kind of assesses like, she's very scientific minded and assesses like chapter by chapter all of these different recovery modalities, from like the tank you float in to the infrared pajamas to the various tracking devices, and like the science of all of them is crap. Like placebo effect, they're changing the name of it to belief effect because it's real, right? Like
you got to do the cold plunge. It's the ice bath and the cold plunge, and that's because there was a paper that came out, and so it's true.
So all of these things, she's like, like basically like if you sit on the back porch and have a glass of wine with your husband, you have the same like recovery benefit as going into the isolation chamber, all these things, right? Relaxing is good. Sleep is good, but there's not magic in these things, or the few things that really do deliver performance benefit are banned, right? That's how they get banned, right? Is HGH, testosterone, whatever it is. They don't test very well in the NBA. I don't think there's a giant problem, but like there's not none, right? There's not none of that. So I don't think that there's like LeBron's $1 million on chiropractors and stuff is like a huge decisive thing. I think that by and large, like Michael Jordan, it was pioneering to lift weights at that time in the NBA, right? It's not pioneering anymore. Like the players that LeBron outperforms all lift weights. They all, and if we could superimpose video of like LeBron running full speed next to Michael Jordan, like it would not be good for Michael Jordan, right?
No.
Like,
well, he had tendinitis. Yeah, chronic tendinitis. They're getting his knees drained of fluid every couple months.
And he was flying over people because they were not jumping very high.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
but again, don't take away the deity of Michael Jordan.
Okay, I don't want to do that. I'm with you on that.
He could fly. I saw him fly.
He did fly.
He did fly.
He did. He flew mostly over my Portland Trailblazers. He flew over.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Easily.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. All right.
But yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's never fair to compare like, generations, because it's just the game changes. It's different. But also to be fair though, too, one of the things it's sort of changing a little bit now for a long time we had, the 3 points. That was the whole thing. And it's still there, but it's less so. You have more people kind of going in, in the paint now again. But that's also the thing. It's just the game changes, every 10, 15 years.
It does. I do think that by and large that like athleticism and skill level today is vastly better than when I started covering the league in 2001. There were players who couldn't lift up with the left hand. There were players who smoked. There were players who didn't lift weights. There were players who didn't really work out. Not all that is gone now, right? Almost everybody can shoot threes. You know, everybody can dribble with both hands. Everybody can make a great pass.
They're doing that. They're doing that in high school. They're doing that in college. They're definitely doing it in college. Like everyone can shoot threes now. I mean, that's just the game.
These are obsessively hardworking people by and large. Like it's this is what we have. Okay, but we've been mentioning these modalities and ice baths and stuff, and there is actually a part of this that I find fascinating. That is, we're going to tiptoe into psychology here. Yeah. So this is where I want you to talk more. But okay, so Chris Washington will tell you ice baths are kind of fake news, right? They don't really do anything.
I haven't seen anything slam dunk, pun intended, slam dunk, like conclusive on it. I think
you're right.
Yeah.
Marcus Elliott, though, purchased a cryotherapy chamber and they use it at the lab all the time. And his point isn't about the physiological effect. His point is that for most athletes, their hurdle to become more elite is something akin to anxiety. And you need to get the best out of yourself, you very often need to relax more, like physically relax. The feeling that you get after 1 minute in the cryotherapy chamber is, for many of us, a little bit of panic. But you're fine. You're absolutely fine. It's the same exact reason they do breath hold exercises. Or I was there when WNBA player Haley Jones was standing on an 18-inch plyometric box holding a pretty heavy weight, and her assignment was to stand on one leg and then touch her foot to the floor and then stand back up. And she kind of got paralyzed. And the trainer guy, John, was like, Haley, you look terrified. And she's like, I am a little, and then, so they got her a lighter weight, and then she started doing it. But she's adding this movement to a repertoire of things she can do comfortably, right? It was, or there was a great, oh my God, I love this story. So Anthony Black is a wonderful young man who plays for the Orlando Magic. He's a great young player. And at one point, Marcus was like, hey, Anthony, like, have you been in the ocean? P3 in Santa Barbara is literally 1 block from the Pacific. And Anthony's like, oh, no, not going in there. And he's like, no, man, you got to go in the ocean. It's just right there. And he's like, well, I'll go in if you can 100% guarantee that nothing is going to bite me. And Marcus is like, I mean, nothing's going to bite you. And he's like, can you 100% guarantee it? And he's like, no, I can 99% guarantee it. He's like, nope, not going. So Marcus's point is that, you want, if Anthony can add to his self-regard the notion that he can cope with the ocean, it might be of service a little bit in adding to his self-regard. And can he keep playing hard when he's tired in the fourth quarter? Or can he move normally when his ankle's a little stiff, etc.? Anyway, I'll stop talking now. You can talk about this use of things.
I mean, I think the Kyra thing in terms of how you're feeling when you're in there, it is a quasi thing like exposure. Like you're being exposed to something and saying, look, this seems like it's going to harm you, but you're fine. And also you're going to be in there for, 90 seconds, 120 seconds, whatever it is. How long?
Depends how badass you are.
I guess, right. 5 minutes. Or but a lot of it, I mean, I think the mental capacity of sport is tremendous. Yeah. And how you're able to say, I feel something, but just because you feel something doesn't mean it equates to something else. Right. We have physiological sensations all the time. That doesn't mean that it's the worst thing. And a lot of the times it's how does your brain be able to accept, but then how you can override and say, this is okay, this is fine. And I mean, I think it really does come to, I mean, obviously there's many things that contribute to it, how you're raised, your lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. But I think it also does contribute to, or what contributes is your temperament, your personality. And some people just have, again, a temperament that is different. And then that is being fed by certain things in their environment or their social dynamics. So like, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, these guys have different life experiences, but there's something about their temperament. I mean, everyone knows Michael Jordan is one of the most competitive. I mean, he's competitive on everything, but so it just depends. I mean, the greatest athletes, they love sport, but it really is when you have pain, there's the mental component, but then it's also the other element of like, I think what is hard for a lot of people, some of it might be a little bit cultural, at least here in the United States. I don't know about other places, but the importance of like resting your mind is like insane. Like, and that is hard to do. Like you can be laying down with Tom Brady's infrared pajamas.
Oh, I love it.
And you're watching whatever, something, a movie or something, but your mind is like fucking going. It's just going and going and going. And it's like, yeah, you recovered, but your brain didn't shut off. And so that's, there's going to be some element of like tension that's in your body on that. So that ability to just complete, and again, some of that you can learn, but this is the difference, I think, between capacity and competency. Some people can have the ability to gain better competency on things. They can learn how to, correct certain things. And sometimes that might take longer than others. But some people, their capacity, their ceiling is crazy. So, and like how you do that under pressure, how you do that in big moments, you got the handles, you make the moves, and then you pull up for the shot, right? I mean, I'm sure you saw Halliburton misses the shot. He goes and gets his own rebound. He goes back to the three. And then there's that split second where it's like, I'm going to take this shot and it's going to win. And we're going to go up 2-0. That's all going through your brain. And you got to do all the mechanics of everything, but you can't overthink it. It still has to just be the natural. Like, that's hard to do. And this is why people, this is what's really interesting about, like, to me, I think Tom Brady's win with the Buccaneers was incredible to me when he won that Super Bowl. It's just insane. Like, to me, obviously he's very talented without a doubt, but it's his mind in those, 2 minutes. You're still down 10 points or whatever it is, and he just is like, no, we're going to do this. And it doesn't always work, but it worked a lot of the time. And then on a team sport, to have everyone locked in to doing that. And that kind of like, if you want leadership, that whole thing. I think there was this German soccer player, Tony Kroos, who was, people still, he's an amazing, he's someone that is legitimately, his brain just works different completely. Not only is he physically and tactically a specimen, the guy reads the field and the long ball, and like he was the engine for Real Madrid in the midfield. But like everyone would talk about, the guy won 6 Champions League finals, which is out of this world insane. People go their whole careers and don't win one. And every time when like the new, like, now they're kind of, more established now, but when the new players would come and they're like, there's Real Madrid, they're in another Champions League final. And you see Tony Kroos there, and everyone would ask, they would say the day of the final, right before the game. And they would be like, the guy's fixing his hair, he's washing his, his slides, he's, playing cards, and he's just almost cavalier. But everyone would say he was so calm. Even right when he's walking out. Wasn't worried. Slept like an infant the night before. No problem. And they're like, how do you just like stay? And then but that translated on the field. The guy, if you watch, just go look up Tony Kroos highlights. The guy never panics. He's going to get the ball. He knows already 3 passes that he's going to do after he gets the ball. Doesn't matter if he's got 6 players around him. Doesn't matter. And I just think there's some capacity there, but the way to stay mentally calm in high stress situations, I think some of that people can learn. Some of that is a competency thing, but I think some of it is just people have a higher ceiling for their capacity to just keep that mental acuity, but also that kind of ability to relax and in stressful moments. And I have to say, I've experienced it not as an athlete, but in my career, when you have high pressure moments, there's times I would study for big clinical exams and stuff, and it didn't matter. I knew all the things. I did all the practice exam. It didn't matter. I go and I, fail the exam. Okay, let's do it again. And it wasn't until I could turn it off in my head and just relax and trust it, because it's somewhere in there, that's when I was able to succeed. And it's just like, really? I mean, so the mental part of sports on that end, and how you're able to relax your mind in your recovery process and during those moments. I mean, I think that's hard to measure. It's a multivariate kind of thing, but like it is, I think that's what that's why I watch sports, because I want to see how do athletes handle those situations. This is why I love tennis, because it's, you have those situations, often all the time. You could be up a set and a break and you can lose the match. It happened. I see it all the time. It's crazy. So yeah, I mean, those are kind of my 2 cents. What do you think?
Oh, I love everything. This is what you just said is what Marcus Elliott thinks about all the time. This is what he's obsessing on, is this kind of stuff. And my buddy Steve Magnus wrote a book called Do Hard Things, where he's an elite track coach, and he's very research based. He just way down the rabbit hole, but his definition of toughness is to continue making choices under stress, right? So I think about like the car skidding on the road. You have to just keep driving the car. You don't have to do a special heroic move. You just have to not freak out, right? And this
it's decision making, right?
You just keep making choices.
It's your small decision making capacity in those high pressure or high stress moments. That's what it is.
So that's what Tony's doing. Tony Cruz is doing, right? He's just going to, like, I suspect there are moments that he just does something that's super elite movement, but I imagine it's mostly he's able to keep performing at a competent professional level, even when crazy stuff's happening all around, right? And Marcus, it's a straight line connection that like the enemy is anticipation. Most of us, at the Tyrese Halliburton moment you describe, think about like, well, if I miss it, then blah, 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 blah.
Hey, right, exactly.
Don't do that, right?
No.
Just sit there and like, no, it's just you shooting the ball. Okay, so my son got pretty into what Marcus Elliott is doing. So when I was flying out to Santa Barbara all the time for the book, a couple of times I brought my son. Because then at that point was a high schooler, and now he's in college. And we were cracking up because Marcus was driving us around in his Audi, and we're going to watch his son play at UCSB, and we're going different places, going on some hikes. And Marcus I'm noticing that there's a playlist going in Marcus's car, but the playlist is only 2 songs long, so they're just like repeating. Which is kind of like a grandpa thing, but I think it was maybe intentional. But one of the songs, you can listen to it on Spotify if you want, is called One Shot Now by a kind of mental skills coach named Graham the Guide. I've talked to Graham, great guy. But this song, One Shot Now, he actually advises, among others, Jaylen Brown of the Celtics, and like a whole bunch of NBA players have been through Graham's stuff. The whole Sacramento Kings team used them for a while. Anyway, but this idea of One Shot Now is like, you don't have to count. You only have to count to 1. If you want to score a lot of points, just score 1 point. Just like make 1 bucket. Just count to 1. Like, instead of trying to get the 20 points or 30 points or whatever the NBA players are obsessing about, it's like, no, just 1. Just do this. And like, Marcus, I'm telling you, he had this song playing on repeat in the car. I got to enjoy it a lot. I still like it. Honestly, I find it inspiring. Then he went to P3 and he's like, hey, you guys, to the staff, right? They're about to leave for lunch. He's like, you got to check this out. And they have a pretty good sound system in there. And he plays it. And Marcus goes out into the middle of the room so all the speakers are really optimized. And he blasts it. And I think he thought everyone was going to join him out there. But they're all just like at the door with like, can we go to lunch now? Then after dinner, he plays it for his family. And like, we're sitting around for dinner and he's like, you guys, you got to check this out. And like, he plays it on the home stereo and he's got his eyes closed. It's like this. And his whole family's kind of like, okay. Like, anyway, the point is, it's a mental skills exercise and not anticipating. And to Marcus, that is very much part of becoming a better athlete. And I'll wrap it up with this little point, which is one of the main movement problems that people identified is what they call blenders, and I'm one of these. So you land and your ankles bend and your knees bend and your hips don't bend. And this is a new P3 discovery that this is a leading cause of lower back pain because the force that's supposed to be absorbed by your glutes is not. And so it goes right up the chain into your lower back and does damage. But what's happening here in many of these cases is that It's like when you go to a rock concert and the one song's ending and the drummer starts the next song before the band's ready. Like the people who do this are often like high achieving, eager beavers who want to get ahead of the game. Their hips are starting the next jump before they land. And so it's just like, it's just, when you see it in slow-mo video, honestly, what appears to me is like, just chill out, man. Like, just let it go. Just sink down, just finish what you're doing, like, and then do the next thing. Right. Yeah. I think it's the same anticipation.
Yeah, no, I that's a really, really critical point. It's a hard thing to understand and then try to kind of manage, but I totally agree. So last question is, I guess, for folks, for listeners and for people that read your book, how do they get out? How do they move in healthy ways? And what do you think, P3 is going to tell us about this healthy, proactive movement that can, help athletes, but also maybe help regular folks too?
So a couple things. I think the easiest thing to think about right now is every pair of hips they've ever assessed needs help, but it needs help either with mobility or with stability. You should know which camp you're in, and you should work on it. So what tends to happen is that people who have very mobile hips succeed in yoga class and love going to yoga and don't lift weights, right? Mm-hmm. People who have very stable hips feel great under the bar, doing their big reps, and it feels like hell to go to yoga, right? Mm-hmm. To have hips that age well, you want both of those things, mobility and stability, which means if you're a gym bro, you probably should go to yoga class. Yeah. And if you're super flexible, you probably should go get some stability around your hips. These are really important things that will affect like every step you take the rest of your life if you can get these things together. That's like a practical one. There's some diagrams in the book of literally like a little home test you can do to see if you need help with mobility. But I'm thinking everybody knows. I'm thinking you're hearing me talk right now and you're like, oh yeah, I'm a mobility guy or I'm a stability one. The other thing is, I suspect that we all right now, including you and me, both have a sense of like, man, if I were really doing it right, I would move this way. I would maybe like, I want to learn how to open water swim. I've never been good at this. I just kind of know I should. I think there are probably people who feel like they should ballroom dance or should learn how to juggle or ride their road bike more or whatever it is. I kind of feel like we don't move enough. And it literally is the fourth leading cause of global death, according to WHO, is immobility. So I think it's probably worth listening to that little voice that's telling you ought to do X, Y, and Z thing. And it won't be me telling you what the thing is because I don't know what your thing is, but do the thing. Do the thing you think you should do. Yeah.
No, I think it's great, and I think more movement in healthy ways is really, really important. Henry, this was so much fun. I really did enjoy this conversation, and it was a lot of fun, and gives me things to think about, and when I'm doing my own exercise and athletics. So big thanks for coming on and sharing all your wisdom.
No, thanks for reading the book and caring about these things, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely.